Aydha Mehnaz has years of experience in the world of luxury and fashion, particularly through her role at one of the world's biggest luxury brands, Mugler. She's worked with some of the most famous celebrities in the world like Beyonce and Dua Lipa, and she also worked as a creative consultant based between Dhaka and Paris. In addition, she's been featured on Vogue, Daily Mail, and plenty of other outlets too for her work. Now, I've been following Aydha for a while now, and her work always seemed very interesting to me. I wanted to have her on the show because primarily I wanted to understand the world of fashion and how it works straight from an insider. The other thing that I found really interesting that Aydha does is how she promotes modest fashion, which is a growing niche in and of itself. She started her career simply through blogging, and now she has climbed through the ranks to one of the fashion capitals of the world. In this episode, we go in depth about what it takes to be a creative in the world of fashion, what's life like in a fashion-obsessed city, and how she upholds her identity despite moving to a different country whilst working in such an alien environment. Without further ado, here is Season 3, Episode 3 of State of the Creators, featuring Aydha Mehnaz. Hope you enjoy the show. This is the State of the Creators, a show about creative individuals who are on a quest to build something out of nothing. For anything else, what does Minazification even mean, right? Is it a term that I'm not aware of because I'm not in the high fashion world, or is this something you came up with?
Minazification, I can't believe you just went right into the source of where exactly it started. It's crazy. No one asks me this question anymore. It was my MSN username. Like, remember back in the day, we had an MSN messenger where we used to chat with our friends at school. Oh, by the way, we went to the same school, right? So we
went to the same school. Yes, of course.
We were shining. So that was my MSN username that eventually I used the name to make my own fashion blog later.
Right.
So, yeah. Minazification.
So that was your name on MSN Messenger, and then you just went straight in.
Exactly. So my last name is Mehnaz, and that's where it started. So Minazification.
And that carried through. I mean, do you still use it for anything, or is it still because it's your blog, wasn't it?
It was my blog for the better. Like, I started my blog in 2013, where I used to do YouTube tutorials of how to put on a headscarf and everything. So, and I ended the blog right after I moved to Paris. So it was around 2017. So it had its run for about 4 years as my official name. Later, I changed to my real name.
Fair enough. Are you embarrassed by it? Is it like one of our early email
share of embarrassment of what kind of email addresses and different usernames they had when they were kids, right? So NSU, when I was in NSU, there was this guy in our class that his name was Short Strawberry 17 or something, and I was like,
I've heard worse. I've heard way worse, but this one's still in that zone. But for those who don't know, who is Aydha Mehnaz?
Just a person. I'm like, because people find me intimidating right off the filter, and especially on Instagram because I don't post a lot of smiley pictures. So, but yeah, in real life I'm quite shy and very introverted. So I don't speak that much unless you're like my best friend. So yeah. It's hard to define yourself in a couple of sentences of who you are as a person. I would say kind, loyal. That's it. Sweet. I don't.
For the purposes of this podcast, though, from your career angle, how would you define yourself?
So, in terms of my career, what I do is I do brand strategy and I do fashion consulting in terms of communications and strategies for media and all and more of like the whole communication spectrum of the side of marketing that I handle. right now, what I do what I do for a day job is I handle celebrity and media relations for a French luxury fashion brand. It's quite global, and it's not like we have a chapter offices everywhere in the world, so everything needs to be organized and managed centrally. So,
Right.
yeah, as a person in terms of career, that's how it I would.
Funny you brought up the idea of not smiling in Instagram photos.
Yeah,
For some reason, it's a thing,
yeah,
especially in the fashion world, or if you're at least trying to be perceived as someone
yeah.
who is cool. You can't smile in the photos, right?
So
Why do you think that's the case?
there's a trick in how you so if you watched America's Next Top Model when you were little, then you should know about this trick, which is you have to smile with your eyes. So you smile, and then you just don't you wipe out that smile. So you're smiling with your eyes, but not with your lips. So that's how you need to put your make.
Yeah, because there's a TikTok trend as well that your fashion look,
Yeah,
your model look on TikTok. I think they ask you to do that thing as a voiceover.
yeah,
But it's interesting your journey as well, because you moved to Paris, as you mentioned, 2017.
yeah,
Isn't it?
yeah.
But prior to that, you were in Bangladesh your entire
Yeah,
life.
I was in Bangladesh my entire life. I started inclining towards fashion at my second year of university. I was doing biochemistry at the time in North South University.
Yeah.
Then, while I was doing my studies and the whole blogging and stuff, I also led marketing for one of the fastest growing fashion brands in the country, that's Sailor. So it has now it's huge. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I did that. I led digital communications, especially for the brand until 2017 when I decided to come to.
So prior to that, your childhood, right?
Yeah.
Were you always interested in fashion? Like, this is something you were keen on, or was it something kind of picked up as you grew older?
No, it's more to do with how my mom and my aunts used to dress me when I was a kid, right? So either showing what they used to I used to change outfits five times. I had my skin.
Wow,
I had.
that's some work.
No, I know. It's so you can have your breakfast in one outfit, and then you have to change around midday. So there was a whole routine, and everything had to match, right? So the shoes, the bags, the nail polish, and the full dress needs to be of the exact same color, or it doesn't count. So
Wow.
that was
Is it still the same for you?
now I've switched. Maybe because now I wear black most of the time, but
Right.
I've grown to be a lot more relaxed with how I present myself and how
Yeah.
I dress. So no, it's not as hardcore when I was a kid.
I mean, you've mentioned that you're kind of into that world because of your parental and your, I guess, senior influences. But then why move to biochemistry in North South University? What was the
So
decision?
because even though I was I come from a very R&G ready-made garment oriented family, right? So and then my dad himself is also is a retail business. So fashion was always there. But then, you have that whole brown societal brainwashing culture where expectation, exactly. So where my dad wanted me to be a doctor, so I negotiated, okay, maybe I can do biochemistry instead. So it was just out of the fluke that I wanted to pursue that because I didn't want to go to hardcore medical school. But yeah, I mean, by third year of college, I just realized that I'm not sure if I want to be stuck in a chemistry lab for the rest of my life.
Because then we moved to fashion, isn't it? That's the craziest part, because you've done, as you mentioned, in the second year you decided to move completely, biochemistry is on one end and you've got fashion on the other. Unless, I don't know, I can't think of a cross section that exists. But unless you go designer lab coats, I don't know. That's the only angle.
Yeah.
But then Did you have any like with your parents, like were they supportive of the decision when you've decided to move to
I did
that?
finish my studies, so I technically do have a degree, which I have
Oh
absolutely
wow.
no use for. But I do have a degree, so I know how to read like reports and stuff, and I can give you insights on what's going on in terms of research. But
Yeah.
what happened was when I was applying for my master's, um, I wanted to try everything, right? But I knew that I didn't know how to like design, but I wanted to do something that was within fashion that relates to marketing and like communications and have
Yeah.
things organized and done. So I remember like my brother has had the biggest role in this regard. I would say to like shaping up the way to push me in this direction because he's the one. Oh, he's based in Toronto, so he was like FaceTiming my mom, telling her that hey, let her do what she wants to do for 1 year, and if she doesn't make it, we're gonna make her come back and do another master's in microbiology. And then she's like, okay, yeah, you're right. Okay, you have 1 year to really prove yourself. If
Go for
not,
it. Yeah.
then you'll have to come back. And I'm like, okay, sure. At least I'll have my chance, right? So
That's a very cool, like the props to your brother. I think that's a very great negotiation skills because it gives your parents a sense of, like compromise that okay, she's got a timer and basically for you as well to think like oh shit, like this isn't a joke. Like I gotta
yeah,
do good at this, right? I gotta be well
yeah.
this thing. So that's pretty cool from your brother. But you decided to move to Paris, and was that something like was it a family decision or did you just
Um,
move by yourself? And was it more like
I,
the central of
so Paris was Plan B. New York was Plan A. I did get into
oh wow.
I did get into Parsons for fashion marketing, but that's when Trump got elected, and my visa got refused. So it was heartbreaking. Like I think it was. I remember the day like clearly in my head. It was 4th of June, 2017, when I applied. When I got my U.S. visa refused because the U.S. embassy didn't know what was going on at the time, and my visa got refused, and they were like telling me to apply again in October. I was like, my session's gonna start. What are you talking about? So what happened was I was looking for different places to apply within Europe to see if I can still make it in the fall for another college, and that's how Paris worked out. I applied the same day. They basically like called me in for an interview like online, and then I had like
Yeah.
3 interviews with them before they gave me my acceptance like within a month. So by the time it was September, I was in Paris with 2 suitcases in my hand and like in the airport with 3 months of French lessons and yeah, it was never a part of my plan to be here, but it worked out. Like it has worked.
And how'd you settle there? Because it's like, moving to a country where you don't speak the language. I mean, you probably do now, but then I guess it is the center of the fashion world in a lot of ways. But at the same time, it's like, how do you find adapting to that whole culture?
So what's interesting and like at least that's what I like to share is that once you cross that border, your mama chacha khala doesn't count anymore. No one cares who you are. You are anonymous, and this like you're this little fish in a big ocean. It's just like you don't know how to navigate yourself, right? So
Yeah.
the first early days were hard. I'm not gonna lie, right? So language was always an issue. I didn't know how to read a subscription letter of how I can register myself to get a subway pass. I didn't know what to order. I just ordered randomly off the menu, and then 200 euros of like food. I'm like, what the hell? So it was hard, and there's definitely a culture shift that you get yourself exposed to, right? So, and it's like you lived your life in one place all your life, and then you suddenly move to somewhere in the West or somewhere that's culturally and how you're perceived is quite different. So you become more self-aware of who you are as a person and what you believe in, right? So it wasn't easy to it was not easy to settle down and really acceptance was the hardest part for me, at least the first couple of months. Like, okay, so New York didn't happen. Now I'm here. How do I make it? I have 1 year to figure this out. So
Yeah.
that was it. I didn't have a choice. So if I wanted to do this, I really had to like sink my teeth in and go at it.
And I mean, is the bread there really as good as they say?
Yes, it was. I can attest to that. It's really good.
Okay. So that
Yeah,
helps.
that definitely helps. But what since Emily in Paris, the association has been quite interesting because people think that my life is
I
like
mean, it did get a lot of backlash, didn't it? Because people were saying that it's not as, I guess, grand as it seemed to have,
it's not.
shown. It was shown on the thing. So is it like? Do you feel the same as well?
Oh, 100%. It's not as what it seems to be in TV shows. It's not like we're sitting in, like, sure, it's the sceneries and everything is great, and but we don't walk in front, like we don't hang around in front of the Eiffel Tower with a beret and a baguette in our hand to like really get into that
The stereotype.
the stereotype exactly. So once you like get the smell of raw piss in line 13, that's when you know you're like, okay, I live here now. Let's face it. So yeah, it's what it
Um,
is.
how did first of all, excuse me or correct me as I say the name of the company.
Mugler came about, I think, in my third year of being here. So before that, I did my master's, right? So I did a double master in luxury brand management.
Yeah.
It was quite competitive because I did not like I was not it because you don't know what to expect in a way where no one would associate Bangladesh or a kid coming from Bangladesh as if something that would be interested in studying in luxury. So one of the press agencies that I worked for, it's called PCD, and I'm still very good friends with a lot of my bosses there. And one of their clients was Mugler. I mean, they do a lot of PR for different brands like Gucci, Balmain, Valentino, like different high-end brands, and Mugler was one of them. So there was a position that opened as an assistant at Mugler. So one of my well, not my direct boss, but like someone who was his colleague, who turned out to be a great friend after, he's the one who recommended that I applied for it, and he put in a good word. So that's how you always need someone to show you the way while you're working with it,
100%.
so that you can get yourself in that door.
And then we're actively seeking for this connection because, as you mentioned, that you didn't know anyone there, right? So where you like kind of had your antennas pointing towards certain companies that you would have liked to work for.
You have to, in a way where you need to have that network in order to get yourself in positions. So school does not really help you with anything. That's something that let's be clear on that. I mean, that it's okay for the clout and the branding itself that you went to one of the best fashion schools in the world, but school, like, you have to understand what you can get out of from school and what kind of education you're receiving. So networking, yes, you always have to keep your radar on in terms of who you're being connected with and who you're connecting or being friends with, and just be nice in general as a person, right? So you have to, it's a very gate kept industry. Fashion, like, if I were to like say that like one of the most difficult jobs in the world right now is to become a fashion assistant, because like especially in a place like in Paris or New York, because the amount of stuff and the amount of like things that you have to encounter on a daily basis, it puts yourself it makes you very resilient in a way where you're like, come at me, I can take whatever you're throwing at me, you know. So it it makes you. So I applied in a lot of places. I got one of the companies that I really wanted to work for. It's a big brand, and I got rejected from there 7 times. Like they would not even accept my application, and I got in for a second interview, but they still wouldn't take me in. And then it clicked in my head. My skin color is brown, and I wear a hijab, and I come from Bangladesh. I don't speak the language, so all of these things does come into consideration of where you want to work and what kind of a place where you think would accept you, or you will feel most like yourself to be a part or immerse yourself into that culture. And not all brands would do that for you. Some of the biggest brands, even if they are catering to like everyone in the world, or like but they would, like, in terms of hiring culture and hiring process, it's not going to be the same because you are different, and they notice that. So it's not easy, right? So surrounding yourself with the right people is important.
When you say, the studying is completely different, so how much would you say, studying about high-end fashion and luxury branding communications actually helped in your day-to-day work today? Like, would you say 5%, 10%,
I would say around like 20, to be honest. So most of it you learn on the job. You learn as it goes. Not all companies are the same. Not all culture is the same, and not all fashion businesses operate the same way either. Some of them right now are like some of them are showing in fashion week. Some of them are not. Some of them are see now, buy now. Some of them are like showing 6 months ahead. So it's like different cycles and different systems. So like the curriculum, it familiarizes you with how it works. But in reality, when you are given the task or given the situation, you always have to, from experience, you always have to, like it's a different experience. What's interesting that that I have noticed is that the stuff that I learned while I was managing stuff at Sailor in Bangladesh is what exactly is what helped me go through my entire education, because I knew what the process was like and I learned it on the go.
Right.
So being associated with the school geographically was an advantage to make yourself be known, or give you that exposure. But the core part of the business where it works, it's the same, right? So, and it's adapted in a different way. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's pretty insane. When you say 20%, I think it's very true for a lot of degrees as well, in a lot of different industries. But it's cool to see that you've kind of adjusted to the demands. And what's life like as a senior comms personality in that world? Like how's a typical day for you?
So the typical day, I would say it's more to do with the ongoing projects than to do something that you're doing every day, right? So like, for instance, a big chunk of my time since the end of last year, like for the last 6 months, was to work on the custom project for Dua Lipa, where we dressed her for her tour. So it was a lot of tight negotiations with their teams, with their management, to get them to a certain, like, to get them to understand what we are asking from them and what they're asking from us, and getting into a conversation where it is after all a collaboration between two creative entities, right? So getting all of us into a common ground where they know what we are trying to seek in terms of the benefits of the collaboration, and vice versa. So these things take up a lot of our time especially in my field and what I do as a day to day, just to like you have your sketches that needs to be like ready, and then it gets handed over to you. You send it to you see what it's like, and then you send it to the other team. So it's a lot of coordination that I get to do regularly. And now, like I'm under like a couple of NDAs that for like projects that can like 2 years. So not at liberty to disclose that, but it's going to be a very exciting year.
I mean, it sounds exciting, So, working with celebrities as well, as you mentioned, you've worked with Dua Lipa and other, I think you've worked with Gigi Hadid and Miley Cyrus. Obviously, a few others you mentioned we can't name for obvious reasons, but what's it like working with celebrities? Like, do you work with them directly? How does it all take shape? Like what was it like working with them?
Who we work with is directly the styling teams. Celebrities come later into the conversation of when it comes to like you have to fit them in person or you have to fit them virtually. Like during the pandemic, for instance, when we were like dressing so many people for music videos and stuff, we were doing all of these fittings like virtually. So having like a tailored site, like a lot of coordination goes into that process. So, but the styling conversation, obviously, the celebrity team and even the artist team themselves, they have a vision in mind of how they want to portray themselves. So hearing how they feel empowered and how they envision themselves wearing the brand is what drives our creative teams to like do the sketches, and then we send over the sketches to the teams and we get our feedback together to see what kind of adjustment that needs to be done, and then we go for execution of how we are going to make the custom looks.
Just taking a step back, you mentioned about being brown and wearing a hijab and being from Bangladesh and in an industry that kind of almost feels like it's almost it's stacked against you. So have you faced any discrimination or any racism of sorts that you feel that's still present, or is the elephant in the room in an industry like that?
Not directly in the way where I would be hurt, where it's in your face, and not my current workplace. But there has been like many occasions, little here and there, where you do get the sense of where the environment gives you that energy that you don't belong here. Because it's very subliminal, if that makes sense. Like it's very under the tone and under the lining. Very subtle, right? So not, but like it dates back to my experience of being an intern, for instance, where because within a lot of in France, the resume, when you give your resumes to different companies, you have to put a picture in of yourself. So there's a high possibility that when they see what you look like, your application is not going to be accepted, because they might not feel comfortable having a profile like yours within their teams. So, but that's not the same case for all of the workplaces, right? But I've had so many of my friends who were born here that has faced so many like discrimination when they were at school and even at university, that that kind of stories I cannot even imagine going through because I wasn't there for the most part of my life. But no, in the stories of like direct discrimination, it's not that obvious. At least for me, it hasn't been that obvious.
What about your own identity, right? Because I think you especially when you're visibly carrying it via a hijab, and of course the skin colors we have. Do you ever feel internally conflicted representing yourself in an industry that doesn't, as you mentioned, generally is very open about or very welcoming of certain things? Like, do you ever feel like, oh, this is not somewhere I can put my fit into? or have you kind of faced it and gone through it?
The industry, so there is a difference here, right? So the industry right now is being accepting towards using hijabi people as in their marketing campaigns. Okay, so that's really that's a good thing. I mean that looks like progress. But when it comes to hiring people to represent within their own companies, I feel like there is a long way to go for fashion companies to really have that diverse workforce. I do feel conflicted. I used to feel conflicted with my identity, not because of what I look like or of my hijab, but because of the fact that I'm from Bangladesh. It's not because of that I'm not proud of where I am, but I've grown to be proud of who I am and where I come from now a lot more than I did a couple of years ago. I remember you had I think you did a video where you were talking about having that, that whole idea of leaving something off and then starting something new, and then right now you were this like mixture of different identities that you're trying to like mold yourself into. That resonated with me a lot when I was watching that video.
Because it's interesting you mentioned like there is a rise in modest fashion, as you mentioned, even if it's from the marketing side of things. But why do you think that's the case? Like why do you think that's something that's increasing and people are paying more attention to this segment of the market?
Because modest fashion right now is a part of having that, like it's a subgenre of the whole umbrella of having inclusive fashion, right? So we're talking about plus size. We're talking about like dressing people for their different preferences. That's where also modest fashion comes into the space. But however, often what we associate modest fashion with Islamic fashion or like fashion from the Middle East, which does not necessarily means that. So it has been quite of a challenge to. Modest fashion was a lot more robust, I would say, when I first started, but now it has like become a little bit more stagnant. But I'm seeing that a lot of with Balenciagas and I don't know of a few other fashion brands who are like doing oversized stuff. It feels like modern fashion can be a lot more to pull off now. It's all about having a preference at the end of the day of you preferring a certain type of clothing versus over something else. So it's going to be there regardless of how you like it.
Explain high-end fashion to me, right? Because a lot of the stuff that we see in terms of memes, for example, that make fun of some of the fashion weeklies, we see some pretty extravagant wardrobe. How does that come into play? Because from the outside sometimes it looks quite ridiculous, and it almost feels like, as you mentioned, like it's a gate-kept it's a gate-kept society where people are like, oh, you won't get it, like only we get it. How do you define that to a regular person? Like, why does this exist? I've seen some pretty crazy stuff. I've seen some pretty okay stuff, but there's always that things that push the boundary a little bit. Like I understand it from an art perspective. Like the point of the craziness is to provoke a response. But is that actually the case when it comes to some of these extravagant fashion weeks?
There are a lot of. It depends on the designer themselves, because some designers can be a lot more experimental with their work, and some designers are a lot more practical and they utilitarian, practical, very like to the point. So it depends on the designer and the quality of the designer and their inspiration. But high-end fashion, high-end, like normally what we talk about as high-end is something that is expensive. But then again, also in terms of creativity, high-end fashion inspires the very the top of a designer's ability to dream, uh, to create something that provokes conversations, that makes a statement in a way where people are talking about it, and people are initiating a lot more discussions, right? So what happens is, for instance, on a typical fashion brand, which has, let's take like Dior, Chanel, like all of those brands, right? So typically you have your haute couture, which is the really like the super high end. You only have like 10 clients in the world who would actually buy those stuff. It's super expensive, and I don't know, like it's a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you have your haute couture, which usually showcases in June and January, July and January, and then you have your ready to wear line, which is ready to wear, which is self-explanatory, and then you have your other extension lines, which are like the accessories, and you have your like footwear, accessories, jewelry, like all of those like other extension lines of the brand, right? So you would consider, for normal people, what they see as extension lines is what high end is, but that's not high end. High end is haute couture, and then you have all the others that have like branched off is making the bulk of the business from, which is a sweatshirt with a logo on, and that's it. But at the end of the day, but that's not what inspires a designer per se. His end goal is not to make a sweatshirt. He wants to express himself in a way where he can, like, even for himself, he can fulfill his creativity and his creative vision in a way that he feels that it has rewarded him as a creative journey and experience, rather than just like making a sweatshirt with a logo on. But sweatshirts, at the end of the day, sweatshirts are the ones that sell. So you have to have a commercial offering that will carry the bulk of the business.
Because you mentioned that you just said that you need to understand what good is, right, from your perspective as part of the wider team. So how do you define what's good, or how do you define what's quality when it comes to these certain projects?
Like, for instance, when it comes to artists, there are a lot of artists that are commercial, and there are a lot of artists that are emerging. So whenever they send us samples of music that they want us to have a listen, and whenever we meet them in person, even with the biggest artists, they do have that, the way they speak, the way they articulate themselves, the way that aura that kind of radiates from them. It's sometimes it's different than in comparison to anyone else who would be like a random person who trying to make it, right? So it's interesting that like there is no right parameter to understand it, but then again, like in terms of how you feel it, like how you feel in their presence, is also an indicator of for you to know that, okay, I believe what if he or she's trying to sell to me. So it's all about a feeling. I know it's vague, but you have to feel it to believe in it.
Spoken like a true artist.
But that's true.
Somebody who spent 4 years in Paris, it shows.
But I mean, that's true at the end of the day, because you have to listen to your gut, and then sometimes there has been so many times that within our team we have fought for projects. We're like, guys, we have to do this. We can't really, we can't miss this opportunity. If we miss this, we're gonna lose out on like supporting her when she is where she is now, and then she's gonna be like big couple of years from now, and then we're like, oh shit, what did we do? So it's like we do have to fight for stuff within the company, within the group, to get these things validated.
It's almost like a combination of things. I think there's that objective angle where you're trying to understand what's out in the market, and then as a team of people and working with a creative, you have to kind of understand that, okay, how can I, feel the project, if it's going to work or not. And I think that's through communication and a lot of talking, I'd imagine, a lot of references, mood boarding
No,
would be
mood
involved,
boards,
I
yeah,
guess.
for sure. There are like mood boards to drop designs and also like to drop inspiration and like stuff that we like. But it's more to do with sometimes what happens is um, that we end up dressing a lot of pop stars that we loved when we were kids, right? So they're like, okay, we're just
Yeah.
going crazy over somebody that we love and just like absolutely going to like gagging over it. It's also
Yeah.
like you're a kid and you're like you just grew up and you're trying to like fulfill that whole dream of being close to someone that you looked up to all your life.
Yeah, that's super cool. But I guess the annoying thing is you can't talk
Yeah,
about it either. Because you can't go and go, hey,
yeah.
look who I just dressed
Like
up today.
because
You
some of the
can't do
projects that
that.
we do, it's like what 2 years from now, not 2 years, like a year from now. So we
Yeah.
can't talk about it. The only time we have to use like code words and like code things on the phone. And like sometimes when somebody blurts things, I'm like, no, shut up. So it's a lot of confidentiality. But once it's out there,
Yeah.
and you see the response, which is quite rewarding. It's not the same as doing
Oh, that's
like
super
him,
cool.
but it's
Um,
it's it's going good. Yeah.
no, that makes sense. That makes sense. What's the biggest reward that you get in this role or in this industry that you've been working on for years now? Like on a personal level, what's the satisfaction that you feel like this is why I wake up in the morning for
Why
this?
I wake up in the morning is to. So this is a question that I had where, like, I was having lunch last week with my boss, who's the director of communications at Mugler, and I told him like, hey, I don't know what I do for a living, and he told me, Ida, how do you not know? You define pop culture. That's what you do. And it just kind of like blew my
Wow.
head in a way where like, yeah, we work with the biggest of the biggest, the best teams in the world, and we are like executing crazy amount of projects, music videos, like a lot of the most iconic music videos has
Yeah.
Mugler in it at some point, and um, so yeah, I guess that's what it is. I wake up in the morning to the
Dude, I love what he said. He's really framed it in a way, I think, that's even inspiring me that, oh, that's so true, like that's super inspirational.
yeah,
So props to him
like
again.
and you come
Fantastic.
from a brand's perspective, right? So uh, the kind
Yeah.
of brand that you work for. I'm working at Mugler now. I might work somewhere else, let's say a couple of years down the line, who knows, right? So um, not all brand have the same vision of how they see themselves in the world. So like
Yeah.
ambassador for Dior, it's not going to be the same as ambassador for Mugler or Balenciaga because it's not the kind of image that they want to put
Yeah.
themselves in. So automatically, you need to every time you switch, you have to train your brain in a way where you know, okay, this person is right for this brand and that person is right for that brand because of their profiles and who they are as a
Yeah.
person. So it's interesting to like to be able to know this is something that no fashion school or no like just by learning from the internet, it's not something that, that you can teach
It's
yourself,
not
right?
over.
So you have to do it on the job and you have to like do it from experience and also from your gut
Yeah.
feeling. So that's why I wake up in the morning.
Yeah. It's cool.
What
Um, it kind of going to revert.
what makes
Sorry, what was
you
that?
wake up in the morning every day?
Wow. It's you've turned the podcast on me now. What, dude? It's changed over the years, right? I think it's for now. It's more about, okay, what can I do to improve, the family that I have. I think that's has moved to number one, and then what's the difference that I can make to people around me. I think that's always been my driver of the work that I do. Obviously, I used to work for companies in the past, and I never felt at home, like the corporate culture where I can't have or feel the impact that I
Yeah.
try to have. I think moving into that more of a consultant role where I've had freedom to work with companies and on projects that I think can make a difference. I think that definitely wakes me up in the morning. But or why I get up in the mornings. But yeah, the problem is I sleep late, so it's rather less of waking up in the morning and more like, okay, what can I do
Yeah.
before I go to bed? I'm a
Yeah.
night owl,
You're
as you
like
can tell.
always awake. I don't know when you sleep, but
It's a problem, man. I'm making a video on that right now. It's how I've tried to wake up in the morning, and the idea of creativity in my head versus sleep is, yeah, but quite unique. But anyway, we're here to talk about you. Just flip the entire script on me. Look, I know we were talking about the good side, but what's one thing you change about the industry?
it's always on. If that makes sense. There's always something happening, and that's a good thing. But then again, it's not a good thing
Yeah,
because
no,
no, like
you can't switch off.
I wish there was a switch off button, at least for like for the time
Yeah,
when like especially for the kind of work that I do. If I don't update myself on what's going on for at least a day or two, I just lose touch. I feel like I lose touch
yeah,
on things. Then I'm not informed. Well informed enough to advise from my position.
yeah,
So you have to keep tabs on what's happening constantly, and it can get tiring. You want certain because you reach a certain age in your life. I know I'm not like old or anything, but anyway, but yeah, but like you reach a certain age in your life when you're looking for stability. But if your life is like passing by the second, it's hard to hold into one ground
yeah,
for too long, and that has been
yeah.
one of my challenges since I've stepped out of Bangladesh 5 years ago.
Yeah, dude, can totally relate. Can totally relate to that
Yeah,
last couple sentences. It's and I think it gets deeper as days go by for sure. Yeah, no, it's super true. But look, what's on that note? Like, what's hot right now? Like, how can I upgrade my wardrobe to be more
you don't have to
trendy?
be trendy. To be honest, no. Like
I
no,
know,
but I'm
but
saying that
but
like in order to upgrade, you need to know what you want to get out of it. Like I can suggest you to buy the Prada nylon bag, but then again I won't tell you that because I don't know if that's your style. So um, it's I can't advise on style. I can tell you what's good out there, but I cannot tell you if it is good for you.
yeah,
So um, being in like there are like different people have their attractions and fascinations towards different kind of brands. Some people like a lot more like girly A-line shaped skirts with pink and all of those things happening. But then there are like people who are
yeah,
like into like more darker things that Balenciaga is doing or Mugler is doing for the moment, and very sexy body con. So
yeah.
it's different brands are putting different things out there in a different. It's a whole like there's so many choices. You pick what you want, and what you think is the right fit for you.
And in some ways, trying to fit the trend every time a new one comes by is
Yeah,
probably
you
worse,
can't
isn't
play
it?
catch up. I mean, therefore, obviously, first of all, there is money like you just can't do that because like
Yeah,
these shit costs a lot of money. And the second is
yeah,
one time they're saying like one time the creative vision is this, the next time there's a change in creative director, he's going to delete the entire Instagram and then start all over again. So you don't know what you're believing in anymore.
yeah.
So
And that's probably why
Yeah.
things come back in cycles, isn't it? Like, we've had stuff that in the past that was hot and now it wasn't for a few years and now it's back kind of thing. So no, that makes sense. Look, we're towards the end of the conversation. This is bloody fantastic. Just getting into your side of expertise. But what's your personal goal in, say, 5 years?
I have a couple, like in terms of personal projects, I have a couple of things in that's lined up. I want to start my own company. Right now, I do have an agency but that's like really small. In terms of like consulting, one of my clients just got featured in CNN this morning, which was pretty cool, and she's based in Bangladesh. So that's going pretty well. And in terms of fashion, my vision is to be able to change the perception of how people look at Bangladesh and not associate it with fashion as in general. Like they associate Bangladesh with a negative context, and they still do. But no one associates it with something that's a hub for creativity and also a hub for luxury. So the perception of luxury, even within Bangladesh or even outside Bangladesh, is it's very different, right? So this is something that I would like to actively work on through various projects, through partnerships, to make sure that vision like towards the end is being fulfilled. That's one of my personal goals, and I don't know, just like take life as it goes.
I've got one more final question. Before that, I just want to something I wanted to ask you prior was, do you think we can get to a point where, as you mentioned, fashion's quite gate kept, or in some ways it's not accessible to a lot of people? Do you think we can get to a point where, it can be accessible in mass, or do you think that actually dilutes the idea of fashion, that it has to be exclusive?
Fashion has gotten, in terms of getting, as a consumer, fashion is quite democratic as a consumer, because you're getting it in retail, whatnot, and brands and the websites and everything. But fashion, being in fashion, will all, to a certain extent, it will be gate kept. People, it's not easy to be in an industry where it's where you can completely make on your own. You need your support system. You need people to show you certain things, how certain things are done. Otherwise, you wouldn't know, because no one told you the rules and how to play. So, in terms of existing in the community, it will be gate kept. But in terms of consumer, on the consumer side of things, it's getting more and more accessible. For instance, during the entirety of the pandemic, a lot of the brands showed digitally, which means that a Vogue editor and me, average girl from Bangladesh, Naranganj, who grew up in Naranganj, is pretty much watching the show at the same time as a Vogue editor, right? So in terms of accessibility of the fashion, it's getting more democratized. It's becoming democratic, but to exist as an expert or in an industry, it's the same as art. It's art community. You need to know your shit, and you need to know who's doing what. So it's and you need someone to show you the ropes in a way where they tell you how are things done, or at least guide you to the process where you find your own voice. Because finding your own voice is very difficult, especially if you third culture. I don't know, this whole scenario. Finding your voice is, in terms of stepping out of being in an international space. Finding your voice is a lot harder, but you need to stick to your voice now more than ever.
It's a very, very cool response. Look, finally, what are the 3 things that you would advise someone who wants to get into the world that you're in? So 3 actionable steps that you can think of. Doesn't have to be 3. It can be, but what are the few things that you can think of that you can advise someone who's wanting to walk your path?
Take the plunge. Don't take too much. Don't think too much of how it's going to pan out later. I had 1 year of time to prove myself, and I didn't know what the hell was going on for the most part of it. It's just that you have to, like my mama, my uncle, he has built a lot of businesses himself. So I asked him one question. I think it was last year during the summer. I was like, "What made you do what you did?" And he said, "I did it because I didn't have any other choice." So you have to
Wow.
you have to assume that you cannot go back. But this is the decision that you have taken in your life. Doesn't matter what the decisions are, but you have to take responsibility of your actions. And so take the plunge in a way where, like, okay, I am determined to do this, and I will do this no matter what. So doesn't matter if you're getting like 12 rejection letters, 24 rejection letters. Like I got like 24, like 25. Anyways, so that is something that you know that, okay, you need to build that resilience where I will make it no matter what is being presented to me, and that resilience can take you to places. So that is one of my advice. And like, learn a new language, because honestly, if I knew that I would end up in France, like in my adulthood, I would have taken a lot more French lessons. But the thing is that with where we grew up, we put so much emphasis on English itself. Biochemistry. Yeah.
Biochemistry.
So yeah, we put like so much emphasis on English itself, than anything else, that we don't expand our capacity to adapt in different cultures. So if you want to be in communications, just any language, doesn't matter what it is, just learn any other language that is, or at least take steps to learn any other language would be quite helpful to get started.
Cool. Well, Aydha, Minazification.
Don't call me that. I do not like to be called that anymore. So
I'm sorry, that's the name that's going to go down in my contact list for you. So it's happened. But I really appreciate your time. Thank you for your expertise and sharing the time with us. So appreciate it. Hopefully we'll see bigger and better things, and hopefully the NDAs will be a little less strict, so that we can know some of the big projects.
Stop the record button. I'll tell you what it is, but you need to keep it to yourself.
I will. Okay, that's where we're ending.